Hello! Welcome back, Ariana!
Oh
my gosh. It's been 4 years since we last recorded this podcast, and we're back.
Unbelievable. And I am so glad to be back in space with you. It just is a dream of mine to continue our conversations and let people know what's been going on, not only in the world itself, but in our lives, in the intimacy world, and how all those things converge.
Yes, so excited. I feel like we have changed our practices in this work. The field has changed as the world has changed. And it's a good time to come back into this. And we're so excited for season 3. And we have a bunch of incredible guests lined up, which is going to be such a treat. Cannot wait to talk to them.
My goodness. I'm so excited for them. I'm excited for all of you out there in our world, old friends, new friends, to be exposed to the brilliance that we've got and the people that are coming on to talk with us. I think when we started shaping this year of coming back to you, that we thought that we would kind of use ourselves as the beginning participants in a little something we've crafted.
Yes.
We've been working up a survey. But before we get to that, I just think it would be great for us to just catch everybody up on what exciting things have happened, personally, professionally, in our lives over the last few years. So, who wants to go first?
You.
Okay.
Kick us off.
How did I know? And that's totally fine. I'm very, very excited to join you all. And of course, we've got Daddy David in the background producing. We've got Hazel producing. The four of us the band is back together again.
The band is back.
Yeah.
Baby.
So as far as I'm concerned, I've been very blessed to have the opportunity to work almost exclusively in New York. I now live in New York. I was living in LA for about 4 years, and we started this journey about 3 years into that. And now I work on Broadway. I work off Broadway. I work in the nonprofit sector of New York a lot. And I'm also very excited to work regionally at La Jolla Playhouse. So this production of 3 Summers of Lincoln, I think, is my 7th show working with La Jolla Playhouse and that wonderful team out in California. So I haven't left California.
I'm Bi-coastal queen.
That's right. I'm a frequent visitor. And for the first time, I think, in the history of that theater, they've hired me to work on every show in the season. So I'll either be an intimacy coordinator or what's called a sensitivity specialist, which we'll get into. Also, as what we've named a community building advocate. So
incredible.
Yeah, I will be very involved in how they work with the visiting artists that are coming in, and also a little bit internally with the staff there on best practices and how to live a consent-based ideology, which certainly La Jolla Playhouse does live. They walk and live and breathe it.
That's amazing. And I feel like that's the next dimension of doing this work holistically, is for theaters and universities and companies and programs to have the buy-in to be like, it's not just in the rehearsal room, it's the whole thing. Like, we want to live these values in all the dimensions that we are working. And that's so exciting that you are stepping into that for them. Congrats.
Thank you. A little bit of the personal side. I live on the Upper West Side in New York City, and I have lost over 130 pounds since we last spoke. So I am living a life of physical health and bringing up to my mental and spiritual health. Incredible. So that's been a huge life journey. I did my personal best or my personal record deadlift, 250 pounds deadlift.
Whoa, decade.
Yeah, it's kind of, and carrying the world. It's kind of exciting. And it really has impacted my presence in rooms. You know, I
Mm,
have developed a lot more respect for actors and what they do with their bodies and with their endocrine system by taking that journey, that personal journey of physical health. And yeah, I mean, I'm same personality wise, but definitely completely different physically. So that's it on me. That's it on me.
amazing. Such an
Carly,
exciting transformation on so many levels.
what's been going on with you?
Oh my
Him,
gosh.
she said.
I've been working with a ton of LA theater companies and university theater programs. Been working as doing intimacy, of course, for those. Worked on some really fun indie films, a couple of which will be hopefully coming out in the next little bit,
Yeah.
doing intimacy, and then also been directing a lot of new play development and readings of those. And yeah, it's just kind of continues to give me a feedback loop of the reminder that directing is my base into intimacy direction and intimacy in general. And it's been really great to just get to continue deepening my work in both of those.
I know
Um,
they're lucky to have you. They're so lucky. I hear about you all the time. Your name is dropped. I know that you are such a force out there, and I'm just so proud to know you.
Oh my gosh, same. I've had the the same experience with you. People are like, "Anne, I love Anne." I'm just so happy to be out there doing the work alongside amazing folks like you and so many of our listeners. Yeah, okay, let's see. What else has happened in 4 years? I got married to my partner. So you see, my name is different.
Yay!
We both changed our name. We both took a new name as part of our kind of next chapter. And yeah, I'm just kind of keeping on trying to stay sane in this wild, wild world and not be completely overwhelmed by
Woo!
everything. But I think fulfilling artistic projects to work on and getting to champion consent based practices in art spaces has honestly really been the thing that has kept me grounded and able to keep going. So I heard this thing once, kind of a refrain or a spell or a prayer or something. This phrase, I'm trying to remember where I heard it, but it was, let me be nourished by this work. We all take jobs to survive capitalism.
Mm.
It's also really nice when we have jobs that pour back into us. So just kind of putting out there for me, for you, for everyone doing this, because there is a lot of emotional lifting and labor in this work. Let us be nourished by this work. I hope it is pouring back into us as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, we as practitioners, and those of you listening out here who are working in this field, and those of you who have experienced the work in this field, this consent based advocacy, intimacy, sensitivity, cultural awareness, we have to work together on being sure that we're staying open and that we are taking care of ourselves and that we are not just being led by the nose to the things that the world is offering us right now, and that we stay grounded at least as much as humanly possible. Of course, we're all human, we're not superheroes, we're not gurus, and that we are imperfect, but to just stay
Mm,
aware of that and to be open and flexible to the way the world is changing.
yeah.
She
I
changing.
I'm so anti like leave everything at the door. I feel like that's so inhuman. Like we don't make art in a vacuum, and so like we have to meet the moment. And something that has changed for me or that I'm trying to put more into practice since we last met is just like my own pouring into myself to make the work sustainable. A lot of witches call it like energetic hygiene
Mm.
of like the practice of like actually de-rolling myself after the work and having a ritual to release the other people's stuff that I carry and that really permeates me from my body after the work, just like we encourage actors and other artists to do. And I've really found that when I actually show up for myself in that way, it makes things a lot more sustainable, especially working on like some really heavier charged things.
I love that. How has the industry and the role changed over the past few years? How has it changed for
Yeah.
you?
Well, I think one really fantastic thing is I meet significantly less resistance than I did 4 years ago. Still there sometimes, but I think overall, the culture of theater has moved forward enough that there is more general buy in. And so I have to spend less of my energy convincing people why I'm here and that I'm there to help. And of course, you still run into some folks who have a resistance for various personal reasons, but that's been really lovely to see just more and more buy into the importance of this work is one big thing that first comes to mind. What about for you, Anne?
I think what's really refreshing for me in stepping into these rooms, again, like you said, more buy-in, more acceptability, more understanding. I think what's really interesting is, the generation that had this work, this consent-based work in their college life often had it over Zoom. So now those young ones are coming into spaces with an understanding and a definition of what consent is and what it means. And they're asking for this kind of work. And for us, people who practice intimacy, people who are coming in with an understanding of what a consent based room actually is, they're they're feeling empowered to ask for it. So sometimes I'm getting called by producers and saying, "Hey, yeah, one of the actors in this cast has asked that we have someone come in and choreograph the intimacy, or at least come in and talk about what boundaries are and talk about consent-based art making," which is so refreshing. And it's great to see that momentum building coming not from the top tiers patriarchally or capitalistically, but from the people who are actually having the work on their bodies. And that's great.
Yes,
That's
I've
great to
totally
witness.
noticed that too. And it just gives me life, especially when young people are the ones to voice the need for this in the room and to advocate for themselves. And then to have each other's back when one of them does that is one of the most beautiful things.
So true.
So, with all these changes in the industry, and I mean, there's so many we haven't even touched on, I'm curious, how has the time you've now spent doing this work and how the world and the industry has shifted, has that changed how you show up to this work in any way or any of your practices? And or are there still some core things that you're like, this is just still steady for me?
Yeah, I mean, when I was saying before, I've taken this huge health journey in the last 2.5 years, really. I tend to show up having done my work, having done my enrolling work and what that means to me. If I feel like traumatic response might be bubbling up, how I take care of myself.
Mhm.
I spent years teaching other people how to take care of themselves without taking care of myself. And it just accumulated in a way for me personally with stress and weight. But now I feel like I have really taken the reins of my own health journey. And that has made me, I think, a better facilitator for other people. So the way I show up in rooms, while it may seem similar to the people outside of myself, I feel wiser about my capacity. I'm not afraid to turn down work that does not fit within my mental health scope. And yeah, just generally feeling stronger about walking into rooms knowing that I have the freedom. Dominique Morisseau talks about how She wakes up every morning and says, "How can I get free today?" And I've really taken that on as, this work isn't valuable work unless I feel free in the work. And so I really try to walk into rooms saying, it's not my job to emancipate rooms, it's my job to stay free. And
Woo.
that's where I'm really rooted in.
That's such an incredibly strong place to do this work from. It feels like a necessary place to make it sustainable. It makes me think of one of the other things I've been slowly working on with a dear friend and collaborator, Christine Bryhan, is a trauma sensitive theater practices. More coming soon. This is great for directors,
Mm.
stage managers, teachers, everyone, intimacy directors and coordinators for sure. But this idea that when you are facilitating or leading anything in a space, your nervous system is the model to which everybody else's nervous system's attuned to. So if you are dysregulated and just trying to push down your own triggers, people are going to attune to that, and there's going to be less of that sense of felt safety and trust. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anne. I think that's just such a powerful way to model, like, we have to practice what we have to live that in an embodied somatic way in the room in order to ask for other artists who are doing work with their bodies to meet us there.
That's wonderful. Thank you for asking that. Okay, now we're going to get to the thin and the thick of it. We're going to get down into it. We got together a few months ago and we're talking about bringing this back. And what came out of that beautiful conversation, or those conversations, was the fact that we wanted to take the temperature of the industry and see where everybody was, see what innovation was happening, see how people were feeling about the work and about intimacy in general. And so we crafted this survey that we came up with on our team, questions to ask, things to bring to the light about where the industry is headed. And we wanted to share that survey with you all. We also will be asking our guests some of those questions. Before we do all of that, though, we thought it might be fun to kind of ask each other those questions, or at least some of those questions, and basically take the survey ourselves in this first episode. We're going to link it in the bio. So you will be able to take that survey yourself. It doesn't take too long. It could take as long or as short as you want it to take. And I mean, Carly, maybe you want to talk about what we're going to do with that information.
Sure. I mean, we were just really curious in these 4 years how the field has grown, and we just really were curious who is doing this work. Some of the other big sections are kind of like, what is your training and working experiences been like? Where are there gaps? What are things that feel like were really helpful? What did you not have that you wish you had? And just kind of hearing what's the state of the field today, and kind of getting a real perspective from all of the people who are actually out there doing the work. And then we're going to share it eventually. Like at the end of the season, we will publish the results, of course, anonymously. Your names won't be with your answers. But we just thought the gathering of information to take a moment in time in this relatively still really new field would be a really interesting thing, and that folks can do what they want with that information, especially if they're leaders in the field, of just kind of having this particular snapshot.
Yeah, and it's also very introspective. I mean, it's not very often we get a chance to ask ourselves, what the hell are we doing? And this is, I think, a big opportunity for us to learn about ourselves. There's certainly more of us in the field. There's certainly more people working in different rooms like universities, on film, television, in theater spaces, in immersive spaces now, which is a really exciting field to move into intimacy. In the porn industry, for sure, BDSM and kink, that's a whole developing communication that we have with consent, which is kind of like our daddy, the
Yes, the
BDSM
kinksters
world.
are the daddies
That's
to
right.
the intimacy and consent professionals.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, we thought we would kind of talk to ourselves, yes, and mommies and uncles and zantis and everybody included in that world. But we thought,
Daddy is gender neutral.
yeah, that's right.
It's
We are now stamping daddy as gender
it can
neutral.
be if you want
It
it.
is. It 100% is. So, yeah, we thought we would ask each other these questions kind of in an introspective way, but also in a way that is honest and ready to launch you into how you feel about those questions.
Yeah. So there's kind of like three sections of the survey, three chapters. And the first is kind of demographic information of just being like, who are you and what are your different identities, if folks want to share that. And just if there's any ways in which your identities and lived experiences inform how you show up in this work. Because I think who we are in our positionality does impact how we show up in a room.
And then the second section is all about training and work, how you are in rooms, what you are working on, how you facilitate when you are hired or asked to come into spaces.
And including things like what kinds of trainings have you had? What kinds of trainings do you wish you had? What obstacles have you run into? Especially, I think a common thing is bridging from training to professional work and asking about things like rates and scope of work and areas of expertise and how you find work. Like, we're really just getting into all of the nitty gritty, delicious details of this.
Yes, yes, the nuts and bolts of it all. And then finally, your opinion about the state of the intimacy field. You know, what do you feel the future of intimacy might be? What do you feel are areas where we haven't been tapping into that we could potentially tap into? What are areas where we may no longer be needed, if that's even a thing? You know, we really want to know about what you think of the state of the of intimacy world is. And it should take around 15 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how verbose you want to be, how explanatory you want to be. So we don't want too much of your time, but it is kind of a good overlook, we think.
Yeah, we want to hear your voice. We want to hear what it's been like for you and in the rooms that you're in and what's working and what's not working, and just kind of hear what this collective of voices tells us.
Yeah,
Should we start at the very beginning?
it's a very good place to start. Okay, it starts with your age range.
Hmm.
It's 18 to 30, 31 to 50, 51 to 65, 66 to 100. I am in the 51 to 65.
I'm in the 31 to 50. And then we're asked to, how would you describe your ethnicity?
I am African American or Black with indigenous lineage, with indigenous ancestry as well.
And I am white with Jewish and Italian heritage.
How would you describe your gender?
So this is a really fun question, which for a while sent me into an existential
Yeah,
crisis. But
we
now I
talked
have,
about it.
yeah, now I have a wonderful, hilarious answer, which is how, when people now ask me how I describe my gender, I say I'm generally accepted as a woman in the anime, but non-binary canonically in the manga. Which is maybe the dorkiest thing I can say. It's a shout out to the character Hanji in Attack on Titan for
There
my
you
fellow
go.
fans out. But I was like, oh wow, sometimes you find a fictional character who is your gender identity. How about you,
Yes.
Anne?
I'm just going to go with female. I'm just going to stamp female on
Amazing.
myself. Yeah, I can rest. I can rest in that. But
Yeah.
you have a cool one.
But yeah, we tried to put a pretty big variety of options where you can click more than one because I'm like, I contain multitudes. Don't make me pick just one little box. And we even have an other, so you could literally like customize your gender because gender is an infinite sphere of possibilities.
That's
How
right.
would you, question is, how would you describe your sexual orientation?
My sexual orientation, I think I would go with pansexual,
Yes, I love that.
gray pansexual is what I would say.
I love bringing like a color sensory experience into orientation.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
delicious.
yeah.
I would also say pansexual, bisexual, queer, personal pan pizza.
There you go. With all the toppings. Carly, do you identify as disabled? Are you living with a disability?
No, I don't identify as disabled. I don't live with a disability. I do identify as neurospicy for sure. Definitely got some of that up there. And that gets into a whole other interesting conversation. But how about you?
I am currently not identifying as a person with a disability.
Cool. And then I think the question that these kind of all add up to in a way that's beyond just demographic information is how do your identities or lived experience inform how you show up in this work? Is there anything in particular that illuminates how you move through spaces in this role?
I mean, I love working on queer theater. I love working on shows that embrace the understanding that we are unique individuals that all have a perspective that is baked into who we are. So I jump at chances to work on pieces that glorify the human experience and the kaleidoscope of life. So that's how I like to show up, ready to unpack who we are as individuals and how we come together to create a story.
Mm, I love that. So
What about
gorgeously
you?
said. I think queerness does really impact how I show up in spaces, which is kind of similar to just my background in sex ed. I think a really useful framework is that queering sex ed is a beneficial, expansive framework for everyone, whether you're queer or not. So, in a similar way, I think the expansiveness of queerness impacts the creativity to which I show up for staging any kind of intimacy work.
Wow. 100%. I'm just going to bring the world into our conversation, when our trans folks are being, the attempt at erasure is so extreme. And if there's anything we can do as practitioners to bring their stories to light and to embrace and accept transness as humanness,
Mm,
I'm all for it 100%.
amen.
Hmm.
I think that really speaks to, I mean, like, this is why we're artists. This is why we do what we do. That we know that there is power in storytelling that can impact the world that we live in directly. And when we can humanize and build empathy and tell stories of people's experiences outside of a harmful stereotype, I think we can actually change the world through that one story at a time.
100%. I'm all for it.
Cool. Okay, that is chapter 1. Let's go to chapter 2. It's training and work, getting into
Yes.
the so we went from the personal and now we're getting into kind of the professional. So the next question is how would you describe your own level of experience in the intimacy field? Are you a beginner just starting out in training? Are you emerging, starting to work and shadowing professionals, building up your resume? Are you a professional just primarily working on intimacy jobs or something else?
Yeah. I mean, I consider myself a professional. I've been working as an intimacy director, intimacy coordinator, and sensitivity specialist for about 4.5 years now. So I feel like people call me to come and work on projects based on my experience. Hopefully, I have people come and shadow me in the future. Some have already. So I'm offering mentorship in a way. So I think professional. I feel comfortable with that.
Incredible. Definitely. I would say same, also been doing this work for a long time. Intimacy jobs are, I would say, most of the work that I do these days, more than half. And I've definitely had some mentorship opportunities to give folks of just having coffee, talking about it, giving some recommendations, sharing my own experience. I know this is a whole other tricky thing and how we get people to shadow us and
Yeah.
when does that work or not. But that's something I'm also really open to because I think mentorship is an important thing in any field, but especially a newer and growing one.
Yeah, it keeps us from, gatekeeping information. It keeps us really supple in our own work. If someone is watching us for guidance, I think it makes us kind of straighten our backs into the work and make sure that we are crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's in the room to ensure people are working within their consent and boundaries if we have someone kind of watching, because the last thing we want, and last thing I'll speak for myself, is to create a situation where my tutelage or my mentorship hinders someone from being the very best that they can be in the work through their lens. If we can get more mentorship, if we can get more shadowing into the field, people won't feel so lost in diving in as emerging and beginning intimacy professionals.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I agree so hard with that. And I think the other beautiful thing that could come of that is just seeing, just like any kind of director or choreographer, everybody has their own style and way of working. There's not just like one kind of cut and dry, cookie cutter way to do this work. And I think that's a disservice to the rooms we go into if you try to, enforce the same rigid practice. So I think through mentorship, somebody who is a beginning or emerging in this work gets a chance to kind of see holistically how one individual person practices this.
Yeah. What type of intimacy training have you experienced? What's your training?
Oh my gosh, I think a really juicy question for most people in this field. I've been doing like intimacy specific workshops since I found out that this field existed in 2018 or so. So I've done a number from like four different groups, schools, four or five of intimacy specific training. I have not certified by anyone. I think that's an important thing to say. Like, I respect that there are many different paths to this work. And for me, in the time that I began, certification did not feel like an accessible path or one that aligned with how I wanted to do this. But I have done a lot of intimacy specific training. I also have a lot of training around sex education and gender inclusivity, just from that chapter in my life, training in theater in general as an actor and a director, which honestly, again, is what informs my work probably more than anything. It's just like communicating with actors and directors. And then also have done a lot of trauma sensitivity training as well, which is a big piece in how I show up, and probably like four other things that I'm forgetting. But I really think that everything we learn and do as people can cross pollinate into this work. How about you, Anne?
Yeah, let me just say that this is a long answer, so you can write down as much as you want about your training. I think, Carly, you and I have very similar journeys. I started as an actor and then I moved into directing when I was in college. And my acting informed my directing in such a way that I knew that there needed to be more care around how actors were moving through charged material. So even as a director, baby director, I started looking at boundaries and I started looking at consent and looking at intimacy and how people interacted with one another during the HIV AIDS crisis. And being actors and hearing that touching someone you could get HIV AIDS and how we built around that, as theater artisans really started me on my journey of what intimacy meant as a theater
Mm,
practitioner. All of the directing that I did after that, while it was informed by consent-based work, I really when I moved back to the States after being away for about a decade, I was looking to find something new. And I started training with IDC first, and then I moved to TIE and got training there as well. And that's right when certification was coming into the zeitgeist. And I felt like, well, I've got all this experience and I've got my own codified way of working with intimacy. And I just didn't feel like I needed that kind of support or that kind of structure. And that's when I started Intimacy Coordinators of Color, which is kind of a meeting ground, a meeting place for people of color to talk about how intimacy impacted their lives and impacted their training. So that led to the sensitivity work that I do now. And now I give lectures on what intimacy means as far as cultural sensitivity and how we can make sure that the field is conscientious about the different lived experiences, whether it's gender, ability, race, religion, how we can make sure that the industry is open to all individuals. So yeah, that's kind of my base of training. And I'm a lifetime learner. I love taking classes. I'm doing a BDSM training through the Carl Jung Center now to find out a little bit about anima and animus, if you know about that. So I'm taking deep dives into more training. I'm also working with the Association of Mental Health Coordinators now. So I'm really diving into training that is more suited to the mental capacity and the structure of mental health in intimacy and how I can help
yes.
to facilitate rooms that need a little bit more support with the mental health. So always going to be a learner. And so the training never ends.
That's incredible. And I am just so inspired and lucky to be in community with you. And I just love hearing all that and just love hearing the care that goes into this work. And I feel like a lot of our listeners and other practitioners of this work will really relate. And I related so much to what you said, and especially as the seed being an actor in rooms where the care was not there and having
Yeah.
that lived experience. I think so many of us who do this work come from that place. And similar to you, then I went to directing. I think I have some ideas about how we can have more care. I know a lot of people also come to this work from a fight background,
Yeah.
which interestingly neither of us do, even though it's like it seems like the majority of folks in this field. But I think whether they come from there or directing or sex ed or anywhere, I really think why people are drawn to this are because they care and they want to take better care of folks. I guess, sorry, this bringing up one other thought I had about
Go
the
for it.
training experience. I'll try to keep it short as we tangent time. The other thing I think that kind of informs my experience is just my practice as like a witch and taking the practice of ritual very seriously, which I think is
Mm.
something that's built into theater. But like before I knew about the practice of de-rolling, as it comes from drama therapy and that a lot of folks in this work do, I was doing a kind of energetic releasing your character ritual, with actors when I was directing really heavy material, like before we had that language. And all this to say is that I think we come to many of the same tools and kinds of practices through all different paths and through whether it's through science or through spirit or both. I think there's a million ways to get to that place.
I agree. And I love that you ground your work in what your beliefs are. It's so commendable because that ground will bear fruit because you're rooted in it. And that's really important to not just take something on or take a practice on without grounding yourself. I think you get into a slippery slope, taking on other people's ideas of what this can be instead of grounding yourself in something that is true to you.
Yeah, that's just a great place for anyone to approach this work. One more question in section two I want to dive into a little bit. These are kind of maybe a few lumped together, but I think this is a very something that a lot of intimacy folks have a lot to say about. So really excited to hear from our listeners who do this work, but curious about what kind of training or experience have you at different points in your career looked for but weren't able to access, maybe especially early on? And what kind of obstacles did you run into? Or was there a kind of training or experience that you were longing to receive at an earlier part of this work that you weren't able to find?
I think it's what spurred on intimacy coordinators of color. I just wasn't seeing enough leadership of color in the field. My biggest goal was to train up people of color who were professional educators, professional directors, professional actors, people interested in intimacy work, but who could represent leadership of color for the field. And so that's what I found was the biggest obstacle was not enough people in the field that identified as I did and went about immediately trying to rectify that. What about you?
That's why you're a badass, Anne. You were like, this is missing. Let me literally make a space for it to flourish. So incredible. I mean, I think when I was starting this work, the thing I was longing for the most was like mentorship or just human conversation for somebody. And I know it was probably really overwhelming when this is first taking off and still is, but just for somebody to take a moment and sit down and answer a few questions and just like hear who I was and talk to me like a person and give me some recommendations. So I think that's why when somebody does reach out to me, I will always at least offer to like talk to them on Zoom for 15 or 20 minutes. So just kind of building community and connection and just having folks that, you can send a message to and just be like, what do you do in this situation? Or building small networks. I have a lovely little text thread. There's 5 of us. We call ourselves Bold and Nasty Intimacy Cohort. Shout
Yes.
out. Hi. But just, building connection and community so that one of us is like, oh, I'm in this situation. Like, do y'all have any tips? Or like, this director emailed me this weird thing. Like, does this sound okay as a response? So I think just mentorship and community. And I think those are things that we just continue to build to fill in those gaps.
Absolutely beautiful. I think the rest of this section, section two, we talk about a few things, information that we want to know, what your rate range is for a live production. Are you currently working? What's your rate range if you're currently working in television and film? What is your general scope of work within the intimacy industry? Are you primarily television and film? Are you primarily theater? How do you identify in these fields and what's your general scope of work? And again, those are all long answer as much or as little as you want to. Do you have a specialty within the intimacy field? If so, what is that? If there's so many places to find this work and get into this work. If you are a specialist in the field of what piece of speciality do you have?
Yeah, that sounds great. We just want to know all those things and what the job looks like for you. So send it through.
Send it through. We also talk about a little bit at the end of that section about building community, like you were saying. What's the name of your group in LA?
Bold and nasty, just
Bold
like
and
internal.
nasty.
It's what we named our text thread.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And, we're really interested in building community. And so we have taken it upon ourselves to offer a database for you, for intimacy professionals. I know there are a few floating around. We want an updated one for the people who take the survey. If you want to be included in that, that's great. If not, you can. It's not a required question, but we would
Yes.
love for you to know that you do have community, and maybe we'll have some events coming up to invite you to.
Yeah, that would be so cool. And just also to say, to clarify, just in case, It's not clear because consent, there are no questions that you are required to answer. You can literally skip anyone. You can share as much or little information as feels right for you. And also, just to clarify that this survey is specifically for folks who are training or doing this work, as I'm sure you'll find once you dive into it, rather than adjacent folks who are listening. We
That's
love you
right.
too, though.
Yes, we do. We do. We want to serve you as best as possible, which is why we're doing the survey and coming back to this podcast. So I think we're just talking about moving into another realm. We want to talk about the big picture in section 3. The big picture in section 3 is the state of the intimacy field and where you feel we are and where you feel we are headed. How do we begin? Should we just ask that first question?
I think so.
So the first question is, Carly, how would you describe the intimacy field at large right now? How has it changed, or how has your perception of it changed since you first learned about it?
I think that I would describe it as thriving and blooming and still growing and still learning, just like all of us. I think my perception of it and experience with it has changed. As I mentioned earlier, I think there's a lot less resistance and a lot more buy-in. I think that it's more common for folks to have heard of this or at least have a base understanding, when you're walking to a room with actors. And I find that at least half the actors that I work with have worked with an intimacy professional before. And what's very interesting, of course, again, just like any director or choreographer, folks have a really mixed experience depending on who they worked with and the context of that, which that can also change how receptive versus defensive they are to continuing this work, which is a very interesting thing. But I think the overall field feels like it is grown and it's slowly like rooting itself into theater and university theater culture trainings. What do you think, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's great that it's growing. I also think that we're in a state of growing pains, specifically in television and film. I think there have been a lot of celebrities come out on either side of the intimacy conversation, some wanting more, some wanting less. And I feel that's just a natural progression with something new. People are going to have opinions about it.
Mm.
When you have celebrities that have 2 million followers and they come out with a comment about, I don't want intimacy coordinators on my set, it really does have impact in the field. And what I don't want to happen is for people who do want to have that layer of supervision on set or in theater spaces to diminish the work that we're doing. We may need to redefine what we do in television and film based on the absolute shift in Hollywood, based on strikes, based on the unfortunate wildfires, based on more people leaving LA and moving to New York, more people being pushed out of the industry because they can't make a livable wage in Hollywood. So all these things are pushing into this new field called intimacy, which may give us a few growing pains. So I feel like the intimacy field at large right now is shifting. I will say that. It has changed from being the hot new thing to, oh, we really need to be conscientious about how we fit into rooms, how our attitudes about the work have impact in the room, just so that we can be sustainable, so our industry can be sustainable. So it's an interesting place that we're in of viability, sustainability, you know, where do we go from here? I don't know, but I think the closer we can get to one another and to a field best practices, a field wide code of ethics, it will make us stronger, because right now we're just kind of wiggly spaghetti. We don't have it.
Yes.
I want a good ziti. I want a good pasta dish I
Mm,
can cut into
al
that is
dente.
together. Right. Little burnt pasta on the top,
Ooh,
crunchy.
yummy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Textured, varied, but collective. And that's what I wish we could start working on.
Yes. Wow. So beautifully said. I really
Yeah.
hope we move toward that as well. I mean, something that I like to say as I think language is so powerful. One of my favorite all-time quotes is from an essay by Susan Laurie Parks, who wrote, "Words are spells in our mouths." I've probably said that on an earlier episode of this podcast, but I'm obsessed with it. But I've started even saying, like the whole shift of language around safe space into brave space. I've started saying even like recommended practices instead of best practices, because I think there really is each room, what the best practice for it is different. But I really agree that some kind of unifying like value and place that people practice this work for, like shared understanding of what is the intention of this job, and then knowing that everybody has like a whole toolbox and different ones will be useful in different rooms. But I think a collective understanding of how we show up to this, which kind of brings me to the next question, which is, how have you been received in rooms where you've worked and how has that changed over time? And I know we've talked about the lessening of resistance. I know when I first started doing this work, there would usually be like one actor who would like have a really big resistance, like pretty commonly because of some of their own personal stuff. Because this work brings up a lot of personal things. Like when you start talking about this is what consent looks like and this is not consent, most actors will have a realization that can impact them emotionally and in their body in different ways of, oh, I've had experiences where my consent was not asked for. I have had experiences of violations of my consent and boundaries doing this work, and that can open up a lot of stuff. So I think empathy for that resistance, knowing that that's often where it comes from, or being afraid that they're like, oh, I've messed up in the past when I didn't have this framework and understanding. And we're
Mm.
not here to throw anyone away. But what you were talking about, what kind of brought up for me connecting to this question, is having this shared understanding of what is the role of an intimacy professional, and having an understanding that we're not here to be the sex police, we're not here to censor anything, we're not here to stop you from having fun or to limit what kinds of stories can be told, and we're also not here to be HR or cast therapist, because I think making art, making theater can be therapeutic. That can be a side effect. It can be healing. It can be cathartic. That's why so many of us love it. But we're outside our responsible scope of work if we're actually looked at and relied on to be an HR person or to be a therapist. And so I think even getting intimacy professionals on the same page of like how we're entering space in relation to those things can kind of get us toward that like nice baked ziti consistency.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for saying all of that. It's all true. I would also say sometimes people see us walk in the room and they kind of give us this guru status, or this person
Mm,
is here to fix the situation, like the fixer or the guru or you know, the spiritual guide of how this room will work. And I think that's dangerous ground too. I consistently try to tamp that down. I'm just like the lighting designer. I'm just like the costume designer. I'm here to facilitate the storytelling and to make sure that people are showing up in the best possible way that they can.
yeah.
So, working within what they feel is comfortable for their endocrine system and comfortable to do something repeatable, something that is sustainable. Um,
Sustainable is the word,
yeah, yeah.
especially for theater.
Yeah, when you're doing it 7, 6, 7, 8 times a week, you know, that can pull on your system. It can pull on your fatigue. It can pull on your emotional health, So we're just setting those ground rules for something to be sustainable. And that's my only goal,
Right.
you
It's
know?
that and tell the story. Helps them
Yeah.
tell the story and find that in the stage. I love that you say that because I've definitely experienced that happening as well. So I think it's really helpful to have that like really clear scope of work. This is what I'm here to do. This is not what I'm here to do. I'm another designer, choreographer. And I think it can get muddy because for this work, intimacy professionals need to have a lot of those soft skills around communication and emotional intelligence. They inform the work, but we're not here to be a spiritual guide or a therapist.
Yeah,
For
not
sure.
at all. I think we want to just kind of give you a scope of the rest of the questions in segment three. I would love to personally answer all these questions and we'll fill out the survey myself. But basically, we talk about contracts, what kind of contracts are you working on? What kind of frameworks and tools do you bring, which is so important to the actors that you're working with, to the directors you're working with. What is in your contract? Things like housing when necessary, transportation, things like billing. Are you on the title page or are you on the staff page? Both are great. I've been on both. What do you get a right of first refusal in the instance that you're working on a show that might move to Broadway, or if you might be working on a film that might get expanded to a larger film, on a television series, do you have rights to work on multiple seasons should the show go? So those are things that we're asking about. Then finally, if you're interviewed on Intimacy Coordinators in Conversation, that's us.
I see, I see.
Oh, what would you want to talk about? So let us know what you're feeling about something that you would be interested in talking about. There is no wrong answer to that. We're interested in investigating every aspect, every corner of the field. So we're really asking you what you want to talk about should you be invited to come on.
Yes, we're really excited and curious to know what you're passionate about sharing in this work. And just really, I'm particularly interested to hear in this part of the survey from folks about like the challenges you run into and what tools or frameworks that you bring into rooms that are really well received, that you're like, this, people really resonate with this, or this is something that people grab onto and utilize regularly throughout your work. So we're just so thrilled to be back. So excited to hear from you. So excited for the incredible guest lineup that we have and to have those conversations and share them with you. And just, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you, Anne. And I'm just always leave our conversations feeling very full and inspired to continue to do this work in alignment.
I absolutely agree. I adore you. When we met that long time ago in that, where were we?
Was it Boston Court?
The Boston Court. And I saw you on stage talking, and I think your hair was like pink.
Pink. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, who is this person? They got it down, and you like had the witchy vibe, and I was like, yes, my people, you know. But look where we are now, and I'm just so glad to be launching this again, launching it with Daddy David and Hazel. We're back, and we're coming in with, like you said, some exciting guests. We are gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about all the things that we need to know and that hopefully you want to know out there. If you know a person who should be interviewed, let us know. And please stay tuned. We are back for season 3, ICIC in the house.
Yes, we're back. And just one more special thank you. Thank you for David for your audio wizardry. Thank you, Hazel, for helping us put together this survey and making it so beautiful and accessible. We're really working with the dream team and just so excited to share more with you.
We'll see you next time.